Welcome to Do You Pay the One? This is the podcast portion of the Possibility Storm YouTube channel. I am joined here by my three co-hosts, and we are aiming to put together a Magic the Gathering podcast tackling all sorts of subjects. I myself am primarily a CDH player, but all of us do play casual as well, and a mix therein, variants, etc. So we look to tackle different topics regarding the format, the overall health of it, and things like that, along with news, things that WotC's doing, anything that might come up that we feel is worth talking about, and getting down to the nitty gritty of and sharing with you. In this introductory episode, I wanted to kind of give a little bit of history about ourselves, and then a little bit of history about our experience with the formats that we do play, and then a couple other things that we'll get into a little bit later. We're hoping to produce at least 2 podcasts a month, so those will be released on the Possibility Storm YouTube channel, which I will be doing the editing, getting that out every couple of weeks. And then I'm also planning on putting this all on your favorite podcast locations, Spotify, iTunes, etc. Again, each episode we're going to try and find a cool topic to talk about and continue from there as we figure this out. And we're happy to have you guys here joining us as we do that. So I'd like to introduce my co-hosts. First up is Beth. Beth, if you'd like to say hi and let us know where you're from.
Hey guys, it's Beth. I am from California, but I currently live in Georgia. I have a small Twitch channel and Twitter called Queen of Cardboard. It's without the F on Twitter, but I'm sure you can find me. And I stream EDH. I do a little bit of deck teching with a friend of mine, Trenton. We also do a section called Earhole Violators on Monday nights, which is where I have some of my friends get together and we just get a little wild and a little crazy and have fun. And I've been doing that portion of it for about since August, 4 or 5 months now. Yeah.
It's
so
like six by now, I think.
It feels like forever at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I actually started playing Magic a long time ago, but only just recently started playing on Spell Table, which is pretty cool.
I love Spell Table. It was a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then my other next co-host is Mr. Fitz. Fitzy, what's up? Tell us where you're from.
Hey, I'm Fitz. I'm from the Canadian mountains where I kill trees for a living. And you can find me on Twitter at Mr. FitzyFitz, and I also stream. I'm the host of the Arena of the Ancients MTG channel, where I stream casual and competitive EDH, as well as like a variety of rule-breaking streams and other bullshit.
Yeah, we like the bullshit around here. Hence the podcast, right?
Exactly. That's why we're doing this now.
And finally, our last but not least co-host, RJ.
All right. Hi there. So I am from the Illinois side of the Illinois-Wisconsin border. You can find me at Darksaber7 on Twitter. I frequent Islane's Discord from time to time. I also am hopping around in Map the Queen's Discord, Modanon, Dan's Discord, or Mental Misplay from time to time, usually spouting memes or talking about stacks, but just living dad life of a dad bod here, and just really grateful for this opportunity. Thanks for having me on.
For sure. I thank all of you for joining me, and I feel you with the dad life dad bod thing. Mine's grown a little bit more to where I don't really have to pay that much attention to him anymore, but I still have to make sure he's fed and clothed and all that good stuff.
In theory.
Yeah, I mean, I do whatever I need to make sure things are done legally.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm Islane, which I already said. You're probably watching this on my YouTube channel. I've been wanting to I actually originally was going to start with a podcast. I had a buddy that me and him had been playing on Spell Table. One of the first people I interacted with on Spell Table and Discord, etc., doing the online remote magic thing. We used to sit around and shoot the shit a lot, and I always thought like we bounced ideas off of each other really well. But he's a school teacher, very busy, and he just realized that there was not going to be the time for him to commit. So he gave me permission to go find some other people. I threw out the call on Twitter, and here we go. Some new friends, some old friends, and we're here to do the thing. Obviously, the Possibility Storm is my main project, but I do want to get this going. Also looking to start doing some deck tech stuff and whatever as well. I stream on Twitch every Saturday for the most part. Every once in a while Sundays, but yeah, for the most part Saturdays. And we do CDH primarily, but I've been doing a lot of variants. We just did Artisan, EDH. We've done Pauper. We've done Plane Chase. We've done 2v2, etc., etc., etc. So I am trying to cover all the bases and reach as many people as I can, and also to bring more attention to just Magic in general. I mean, I'm not going to be bringing in more attention than some of the bigger guys, but we have found our little niche, and it's been great. I appreciate you guys being here, and let's get on with the show. The main topic outside of introducing our personal selves is I wanted to go over our Magic the Gathering histories. Basically, how you got started with Magic. I feel that's always kind of a cool story from most people is, their brother's, cousin's, baby's, mama's uncle played and gave them a couple cards and boom, they were hooked. So I'm going to just randomly start with Fitzy. Why don't you tell us how you got into Magic and basically how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. Many moons ago when I was like 8 or 9, I think right around like Antiquities or right around there, my cousin was like 16, was babysitting me all the time, and him and his friends played Magic, and I was always, even as a young Fitz, a fucking nerd. And I saw Shivan Dragon, and I was like, oh, that's so cool.
We don't have a camera right now, but I would show you the nerd life that's tattooed on my wrists. I too have been that my entire life.
And so yeah, they were playing with dragon cards, and I was like, oh, this is so fucking cool. You're a wizard, and you like summon a dragon, and then I wanted to learn how to play.
Did you wear flannel? Did you wear flannel as a wee Fitz?
No, I wore hockey t-shirts. I'm a huge hockey fan.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, they taught me how to play. I didn't really like get the game because I was pretty young still, and I just remember collecting the cards until I was probably like 11 or so like 6th edition, and that's when I started to like really figure out how to play Magic. Played it most of my like teenage years. Quit, sold my collection around like 20-ish, probably, like a lot of people ended up doing, for not nearly enough money.
Yeah.
And then when I was like 25, I moved to Edmonton for a new job, needed to change the scenery. And when I was moving there, my buddy who was going to be my roommate and moving there was like, oh, we're all playing Magic up there. I was like, really? Nerds? And then he's like, oh, it's way different now, though. We play this format where you use a legendary creature as your commander. And then I went to like a gaming like house party up there, played it once. I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm hooked. Let's go.
Hell yeah.
And I was right back into it. And I've been playing since, I guess that would be like 2014.
Nice.
Because I remember those monocolored planeswalkers. They came out like shortly after I got back into the game.
Origins, right?
Yeah, right around there too. Like, and then they had the planeswalker commander decks with like Teferi and Duretti and stuff.
Yeah.
Those came out right around when I got back into the game, like shortly after. And then, yeah, I've been playing Commander ever since. With different friends, and when I moved back to the town I'm in now. And then during the pandemic, got into Spell Table because I was bored and I couldn't have people over to play Magic with. And one thing led to another. I started streaming it.
And here you are.
Yeah, and here we are.
And then Baloney got famous.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that my cat is really cute, and I've been riding her coattails all the way to the bank.
All the way to making a logo and everything.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, that's cool. I like that story. It sounds very similar to mine, but I'm going to save mine for last. Next, let's hear from RJ.
All right. So, honestly, it really kind of started once I got a Game Boy Color, and I discovered Pokemon trading card game on there. Remember that old Game Boy Color game that was on there? It was just absolutely addicting. And then from there, it kind of turned into, okay, what else is there out there besides Pokemon? So I went into high school, and I was just playing just white weenies and mirrors back in Mirrodin block. And of course, one of my friends by the end of high school was just like, okay, I'm going to run 5 color slivers and counter spells. And I'm just like, but my kitchen table white weenie's full to that. And they're just like, yeah. So really from that, I kind of got a little bit burnt out, but really kind of hit my stride junior year of college. And the Lorwyn cycle of elemental incarnations came into my view, and I fell in love with Vigor in particular. And really from there, just developed my love for green. Played for a couple years in college, got out of college, it kind of just faded away into a shoebox somewhere in my closet. And then my girlfriend, now my wife, back in 2017, I was in the middle of a Destiny raid on PS4. My wife, her friend, and her sister were all just playing at the dining room table, just playing Commander. And I'm just peeking every now and then, of course, costing my raid team precious minutes and precious hours in the game. And I'm just like,
hold on, guys, I gotta pee again.
No. I was like, what is this Oloro that you speak of? And so eventually I was just like, okay, what's an easy gateway to get into here? And so I kind of started with Krenko. I was like, okay, goblins, tokens, aggro, my speed.
Tribal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Easy. But then...
Strong.
Exactly. Incredibly strong. I was like, Thornbite Staff? Yes. And then as soon as I discovered that, my play group was just like, And I'm just like, yes, I have admitted the fact that I do like powerful things and fun synergies. But from there, it turned into my, tried and true signature deck, Omnath Locus of Mana. And that's kind of just followed me wherever I've been. And I went to my LGS, I want to say, like once or twice a week for a couple of years until the pandemic hit. And in 2019, just spotted Playing with Power videos. And in early 2020, came across Alan and the Mental Misplay charity streams. And I'm like, this is so wholesome. This is so fantastic. They're playing at the highest power level. What can I do to get on that level and be with these wonderful people? So came across Madanon Dan's Patreon and Discord. That was my gateway to meeting Mab, meeting Skylar, Claire, a whole bunch of wonderful people. And eventually down the line getting to play with Fitz once or twice. And just so many, I don't know, just the opportunities opened up from there. And my first CEDH deck was Edric, now is extended into Ashaya, Winota, and now Islane and I will occasionally send the message of just like, how can we make this stacks? Or how can we make this stacks better?
Yep.
And so that's where I'm at now. Just, I don't know, with the dad stuff, as you all can understand, or at least the parenting thing, just trying to find my right moments to get some games in and have some great conversations with friends. And I'm really just happy that we're able to do this, and we're going to be doing this for a good while.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like all of our histories are going to be kind of similar, but Beth, maybe prove me wrong. I don't know.
I don't know that I can prove you wrong, but I'm going to try. So I got into nerddom when I was 5, and I played video games. And that sounds silly, right? You're like, Beth, you couldn't possibly. But my uncle Tony was a computer programmer. He lived at home when I was still growing up. And he programmed a game just for me to play. And from there, I played Lemmings and Diablo and all of those games, Age of Empires, with a nice splash of like Math Blaster and Oregon Trail, you know?
Oh my goodness, Math
Nice.
Blaster is such a mood. Oh my goodness.
Well-rounded nerd. But it wasn't until the 90s when Magic came out that I was probably in middle school when I started playing. I had a friend who got really super into it. And I think what I loved about this is I could just build my biggest army and turn them right, and they would go stompy stomp. So I loved worms and vampires and all of this like mythological type stuff. But my family thought it was stupid, so they wouldn't let me buy any. So the only interaction that I had with it was with these few groups of friends. And as one does, they grow up and they move away from home. I kind of moved away from Magic for a really long time until I joined the military. And it turns out that people in the military are nerds. And I feel like I can say that. Fitzy can back me up here. But so many people play Magic. But again, you start playing, then you move away from your play group, and then you have to find a new play group. And I kind of did that off and on for a couple years, but didn't really have like a strong connection to any one community or anything like that. It was just kind of my thing. I was way more into World of Warcraft, way more into video games still, because I could play those with the same people for years and years and years. And then I got married and had kids and that kind of thing. And so all of that really took a back seat. And I think the next time that I tried to play Magic, it was around the time that first Kamigawa came out. And I'll tell you, the difference between like original Magic and Kamigawa Magic.
Yeah.
It's big. It's a big difference. And I didn't like it. I thought it was complicated. I didn't want anything to do with it. And I was like, meh, not for me, right? So I didn't really get into Magic until I found a play group on Post that played Commander. And this, when I say Commander, like the rules that we have in Commander now, like there were no rules. I had 5-color dragon. I'm not sure how I made it work, but it worked without an dragon. So that was really like the height of my experience with Magic for a really, really long time. And when I got divorced and I moved again, it just kind of faded back into the background until this last year. And I know the pandemic has been hard for everybody, but I feel especially beat up by it. And this last year, my daughter got arrested. And then about 6 months later, she was suicidal. And I felt so very alone. And I had been kind of trying to start a game night in my home because I didn't want to go out into the public where, you know, the virus was. I didn't want to get sick. I didn't want to get my friends sick. So I was trying to keep something really small at home, but it wasn't really working because, again, it's a pandemic. So people would be sick and then, you know, they'd be gone for 2 weeks or stuff like that. And 2 of the guys that were in my game night group kept coming back and kept coming back and kept coming back until they noticed that I had one of the Friday Night Magic boxes, you know, the 2019 one with 5 decks.
Yeah, the game night.
Yeah, the game night.
Yeah. I bought the first one, not the second one.
Yeah, so I had it just kind of sitting there and I was like, this is as much as I'm going to allow myself to get into Magic because I know how quickly you can go down the rabbit hole and like, that's it. I'm just going to keep that. If the kids want to learn how to play or if, you know, people want to play it, that's it. And come to find out, these guys play Magic too. And as things were starting to get worse and worse with my daughter, I felt more and more alone except for these guys. But they're 2 people. And I was finding that a lot of times I was alone. And the kids were in bed and I didn't really have anyone to talk to or anyone to like voice my feelings to or anything to do. And just sitting alone with your thoughts is not great for a regular person, but for someone who's dealing with a high amount of stress and, you know, my own traumas, it's not good. Right. And I have known about my LGS forever. It's right around the corner from me, but I did not want to go subject myself to what I thought was a unfortunately high amount of nerd in one place. Anytime I've ever been to a nerd spot, it's been dark and gross and
Smelly.
dirty and small and smelly. And I'm sorry if that's your favorite place to go in the world, but it wasn't mine. But my LGS is not like that. It has big windows, it's open, only occasionally smelly. And best of all, the people are really nice and really welcoming. And
That's awesome.
that was it. That was it for me. But it's still like, you know, when you're like, I gotta feed this hunger, like crack is whack. I don't know. Like they say meth is addicting, but they haven't tried magic because it was not enough. So
I mean, the biggest meme has always been that, you know, give your kids a magic addiction and they'll never be able to afford drugs.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so true. So from there, I had already kind of been streaming off and on, but I wasn't really enjoying it. And I'll be honest, I'm not a great streamer by myself. Like I can't talk at a wall.
Yeah, I've done solo podcasts when I like didn't have somebody to do it with in the past, and it's difficult. I found the only way to do it really is to write yourself a script and basically read it or ad lib it. Even then you can tell that you're talking to yourself when you listen back.
Yeah, I'm not great at it. So I didn't love it. But I started looking on Twitch and looking at like Magic and, you know, fell on the Arena crowd pretty quickly. And I like Arena, but I don't love Arena. And it's still by yourself. And then I learned about Spell Table.
And it was over. Yeah.
So I love you guys. Don't kick me out for talking too long. But that's my Magic story.
No, for sure. And that was similar but different enough that you proved me wrong, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, well done. So mine is similar, but I think the main thing that's different is how I got into it. I didn't have a friend or a buddy or a family member or a peer show me the game or where I saw them playing and asked, hey, what's this? I was actually... So like Beth, I started being a nerd in the 80s. My dad bought the NES and shortly thereafter got into PCs and dumped the NES on me. And I was like, hell yeah. I'm like 4 years old, like playing Mario and like sucking at it. And then eventually I moved on to the Genesis. And it was right around that time that I had gotten into... because I was always big on cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons, like most people in my age group, when that was still a thing. There was Ninja Turtles and Voltron and Thundercats and just like all these cool like animated shows that I watched, and that in turn got me interested in comic books, especially because there was that X-Men animated series in the 90s, the Spider-Man, the Batman. Like
I'm only laughing. I'm only laughing because my grandparents raised me. So y'all got Saturday morning cartoons and I got like Touched by an Angel and Highway to Heaven and also NYPD Blue, Walker, Texas Ranger. I could go on.
I remember those two because in most families back then had one TV and it was in the living room. And if it was your parents' TV time, you watch whatever the fuck they wanted to watch. And that was it.
I've seen so many episodes of SVU. Let me tell you.
Oh, I mean, I've seen a lot of that. So my family watched a bunch of different things. And my parents were divorced when I was 3. So I went back and forth at partial custody. And so there was like, times I was at one house and they watched this stuff. And then times I was at another house and they watched this stuff. And just anyhow, the animated series that I was watching and into, especially after school, Saturday mornings, stuff like that, got me into wanting to read comic books. And so I kind of got obsessed with that for a while where I was collecting comic books. And then I collected baseball cards for no apparent reason because I've never really liked baseball. But that was just a thing that kids did. So it was like, okay, I'll buy some baseball cards. And like, I don't know if I ever had anything worth anything. And I don't own any of them anymore. So who knows? But maybe a dumpster diver somewhere got lucky. But, it didn't do anything for me. But then I started noticing when I would go to the comic book store that they'd have packs of cards. And I remember collecting things like Marvel Masterpieces where it was just a bunch of like really ridiculously cool art. And then they'd have like these super crazy hyper foil, blah, blah, blah special edition cards that were like the chase rares.
I still have a
And
couple of those actually. in
I
my
actually
closet.
still have a few binders with full sets just chilling. I've looked it up, and I've called around. Nobody buys any of it. Like anything from the '90s is not worth anything. It's like I was
You're worth
born
something to
to
us.
lose.
Just like so
Aw.
mass produced.
It was overproduced for one, and for two, there's still too much in circulation. It's one of those things like if I owned, a first printing Amazing Spider-Man #1, that's worth something. But because there's no cards from back then, there's not like maybe by the time I'm 60 in like 20, 30 years, maybe something like that might actually be desirable for someone that's the same age as me and wants to like have that thing because they always wanted it when they were a kid and they were poor or whatever the case may be.
Now I can stop crying about all my kid magic cards going, I don't know where.
Oh, I have that's still coming. You wait. So I got into comic book cards, and then my dad. Basically every weekend I'd be begging my dad because I had yard work every weekend. Every Sunday I would do various stuff in the yard, and I got a $5 allowance for that. So I would do my thing. That would be my thing every Sunday. I'd get up early. I'd go knock that shit out. My dad would hand me that crispy $5, and there was this liquor store that was like a mile away. It was the closest thing to me, but they also had just like one of those, those single racks that can hold like maybe 10 different comic books that spins around.
Yeah.
They had one of those. So I wouldn't say an extensive, selection, but they always got the new comics in. So I could always go in there and reliably get the next Spider-Man or the next whatever. But then there was other places in town because back then comic book stores were all over the place. I remember looking in the phone book with like my grandma and being like, I want to go to all of these. And we would just drive around to different places out in LA and she would just take me in and we'd buy comic books. And I was looking for back issues and stuff and then back cards for those sets to complete them. And it was a thing. And then one day I saw magic cards and I was like, what is this? Oh, it must be some new collectible thing. Cause it said collectible on it, but I think it said collectible card game on the packaging. But my kid brain was just like, this is collectible. It might be the same thing. I'm going to buy some of these. And then I opened up the packs and I'm like, what the hell is this? And there's no explanation when you buy a booster pack. You had to buy a starter deck, and those came with a little tiny booklet that would actually explain the rules and what the different keywords were and the, up, untap, upkeep, draw, blah, blah, blah. Like it explained everything. I didn't have that, so I just had these cards and didn't know what to do with them. And that was probably 3rd, 4th edition, Unlimited Revised. I know it was still prior to Ice Age when I got those initial packs, but I didn't know what to do with them. And then I showed some to some friends, and some friends bought some too, but we still didn't know what we were doing. And we kind of tried to make up stuff with it, but we never really had that much fun because we didn't know what we were doing. So eventually we ended up going, I found the starter decks and bought that, read the rules. And then we kind of understood. We played a little bit, but it was like, I didn't really have anybody that was super into it. And I was still kind of shaky with it. So lost interest, didn't really do anything with it till about high school. And high school for me started in 96. So it would have been around like Mirage era, pretty much like Ice Age going into Mirage, that sort of time. So I remember buying tons of packs of those sets and then building decks. I remember I built a Dragons and Drakes deck that was Izzet. All the dragons were red, all the Drakes were blue. And it was basically a curve of like, early ramp into Drakes. So you have something to do. And then eventually late game, get that Shivan Dragon to win with the fire breathing and all that. So classic stuff.
You were ahead of your time playing red blue dragons before anybody else.
I got a Shivan Dragon recently and was like so excited, and it's worthless, but I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I still have a couple laying around, but not those OG ones. They reprinted them, a bunch of times. But yeah, so basically that was where it was. Lunchtime in high school, at the lunch tables. The nerdiest of nerdy outcast people, but I was kind of an outlier. I was a nerd, but I didn't look like a nerd, and I didn't dress necessarily like a nerd. And like, even though I did well in school, I wasn't like top end. I didn't have straight A's. I was like a 3.5 kind of kid. GPA. So, I also had friends that were jocks. I had friends that were punks. I kind of didn't have a group. I just kind of floated around. So anyhow, I ended up with this group of misfits at the Magic tables, and some of my other friends would come over and make fun of me, and I'm just like, whatever, nerd life, bro. I don't give a fuck. And then I got interested in girls. And that kind of made Magic take a backseat, like a big backseat. But then I ended up dating this girl that kind of expressed I was talking about it one day, and she kind of expressed an interest. And then I had some other friends that were kind of expressing an interest. And so we got kind of a little kitchen table group together. One of my buddies had a couple little brothers, and everybody bought packs. And we'd do big multiplayer games, similar to Commander, but without any of the Commander structure. And then I had some of them move away. I moved out of my parents' house and got my own place and broke up with that girl. And, it basically just, it took a backseat and I didn't play. I think I ended around Torment or Judgment, somewhere in that ballpark was the last set that I remember buying packs from. And then I didn't touch the game until Kaladesh. So I wanted to. There was never a thing like, I knew Magic Online existed, but I never played it. And then they had a couple like single player games that came out, like Duels of the Planeswalkers and whatever. And I played a couple of those, but I was really not that interested because it wasn't the same as using paper. I ended up moving to LA and I met the girl that I'm with currently. And she at the time was living with some roommates, and one of the roommates played Magic. She told me that and said, I don't remember how it came up, but I said something about Magic at some point, and then she brought up that he played Magic, and then she introduced me to him and we started playing. And initially, I was just getting back into Standard. We played, 1v1. He had a couple buddies that played, but there was never consistency to really have like a solid regular play group until, like I said, beginning of probably like 2017 or so. Like I saw the Commander precons on Amazon, and I was like, "What is this?" And I bought one. It was Daxos the Returned, one of the experience counters. I think that was 2015, just before Partners came out. Well, Partners had come out, but I didn't know about them yet.
I'm a Karlov of the Ghost Council fan, so I know that one intimately well, yes.
Fuck yeah, Karlov gang.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the deck, but my other friend bought Mizzix, and the other one had Azuri, and Daxos doesn't do well into those.
No, that's a tough matchup.
Yeah. So we basically got into Commander from there, and then it was just the arms race. Like I said, I had the two guys regularly, so we would play pretty much every weekend. I want to say it was every Friday. I don't remember the exact date, but we would play regularly, and we ended up kind of having the arms race. We had a fourth guy kind of join the rotation for a while, and that was sweet. But most of the time, it was just three of us, and we'd play this oddball Commander, and we just kept going after bigger, better cards. One of the guys had like a brother-in-law that was like, here's all my old cards, and got like 5 out of the 10 duels.
Oh,
just like no big deal. And so he put those in his casual list, and the rest of us are like on tap lands and basics. I'm like,
playing
cool.
Guild Gates. What the fuck?
Yeah, dude. Like he was totally pub stomping us. And it was unfair because he just got all this shit for free, and we were like, dude, that's not cool. But here we are. So. Yeah, I mean, it went from there. We had the arms race. We got to the point where we were basically playing CDH or maybe like high power fringe without really even knowing that was a thing yet. And then we all kind of got on the internet because we had already been using EDH Rec to like kind of get ideas because that already existed. And as I think was mentioned at some point while we've been talking to the MTVG Salvation and some other websites that existed, MTG Goldfish, etc. So there was information out there where you could kind of start to learn about the format and what was going on. And then I fully got into it years later. Eventually that play group broke up. I ended up moving back to my hometown and didn't have anybody that I knew that played. And I basically, for about a year, bought cards, brewed decks, and had nobody to play with. At one point, my sister said, because she ended up meeting a new guy and he played Magic. They're married now. So there were times where like they'd come over for a family function and we'd play three player pods. But it was not that fun because I was like very competitively minded already, and they were very much casual, and it was like I didn't really have anything where I wasn't pub stomping, or I'd basically have to say like you two versus me, and then I'd still win. So it was never really fun for anybody. And then so I did that year of solitary, and then spell table. You know, the pandemic happened. Spell table. I was watching. I had been watching playing with power and like the command zone and stuff like that for a long time. The prof stuff like that, but play to win. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, it was them and casually competitive and a couple others that really got on my radar. And I was like, I really like this and I want to get into this. And I got introduced to the Play EDH before it was Play EDH. It was something else, I think. Their Discord, and then there was before Spell Table. There we used to use Whereby and other things. Spell Table wasn't even called Spell Table; it was something else. I don't recall what the name was now. But then they were sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. for a minute, and then they got taken over by WotC, and well, here we are. Either way, I got introduced to that, and then playing with random people. I found other people that I liked hanging out with, talking to, etc. Got on a couple Discords, and then finally said, you know what? I'm just going to take the plunge and make my own content because I want to play with those people. I want to have them on my show. I want to be on their show. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I'm known, because if I'm just some random dude begging to play on your show, they're just going to be like, no. But if I'm a guy that also does the same thing you do, you're more likely to join. So my scheme has succeeded as far as that goes. So yeah, I mean that's where we're at. I started the show, and then I met a lot of cool people. I've played with a lot of the people that I didn't idolize, but looked up to. I've participated in charity streams, other people's streams. I've done pretty much everything that I was looking to do, and I guess that culminates in being invited to the MLC this year, which is, I think, really cool. I knew about it last year. I watched some of the videos, and now I'm going to be in it. And I don't even know what to do with myself, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah, I'm super stoked for you on that, bro. That's awesome.
I think it's going to be fun, but I don't know what to expect. I've never played in a tournament. Period. I've not. The closest thing to a tournament I've played in is a pre-release event, and that's definitely not a tournament. So,
Trial by fire.
Definitely doesn't take like 4 months to finish.
Yeah. With that, I think I rambled for far too long, but I think this is a good time to kind of segue into what we think the meta is like, or how it's been and how it's changed and where it's going. Because Magic is an ever-changing game, and there's constant fluctuations in the meta due to new sets coming out, things being banned, things being restricted, yada yada. The meta has definitely shifted, and we all kind of said that we've been there since close to the beginning, and we've played off and on throughout the years. So I'd say we have a pretty good wealth of knowledge between the four of us. Maybe not necessarily specifically with CEDH, but I think that the meta has shifted even with EDH itself. You see posts all over the place of people complaining about this isn't the way EDH used to be, or this is power crept, or things like that. So
lots of that's rose-colored glasses, though.
I mean, that's anything. Sure, yeah, I agree. But so I mean, going back to basically. I am comfortable going back to, say, like 2016, 2017, as far as knowing kind of what the meta was like. Prior to that, not really. Fitzy, I think you said you started playing a little bit before that, but maybe you could give some perspective before 2016 as far as like the kind of stuff you were seeing when you were playing.
Yeah, like when I first got into Commander around like late 2013, 2014, like I was playing with an established group of people, and there was like 12 of them. It was a pretty big meta. But it was like Battle Cruiser big time. Everyone was like, games lasted fucking like 2.5, 3 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And it was only ever ended by like 7/7s.
Right.
Like maybe one person played combo out of all 12 of them. Everyone was like, no, we're just all Timmies. And I think that was true for a long time.
I think it was too. Either that or we just were blind to what else was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I only had my small play groups, but I feel like for what I saw was mostly just combat wins, no tricks, it was like very rare that things got countered, like, and you just got the biggest board state out and whoever got there first won. And now there's alternate win cons and high powered cards, and you can drop your commander on turn 2. It's really changed the way not only that I play the game, but also how I build decks. Whereas before, like, your commander was there to like lead your team, but it was okay if he didn't come out right away. And now, like, you want to rely on your commander. At least that's how I build, is I want to rely on my commander more, and I want to be able to cast my commander multiple times. And it's definitely, I would say, I wouldn't say power crept, but because I don't like that terminology, I think especially if you include rule 0, you can kind of change that however you want to be, but it's definitely a different game.
I'd say it's efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to use a term from League of Legends. They talk about with League of Legends game design is feature creep, and new age commanders just have more features on them than older ones did.
For sure.
Not to mention just features, just more mechanics. Just mechanics in general, and more efficiently.
Yes.
Like, what Eminence in and of itself was a feature that just decreased, like, just the cost in terms of just being able to get effects on the battlefield that you don't have to pay for. So it's I don't know. There's just been so many mechanics and so many features and more efficiently costed things. It's exciting, but I can also understand the frustration from certain parts of the community.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you go all the way back to when, like, the first legendaries were printed in Legends, like, I'd say 75-80% of them are vanillas that cost like 6 mana.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like,
lots of them are
here's
just flavor text.
Yeah, it's like, here's a 6 mana fucking 4/4 with nothing. Like,
Here's some
just
weird
a cool
dude,
name.
a guy with with a cool name and an axe. It's like, okay, who's he?
There were some that were cool, like Dakon and stuff like that, but they were still even too overcosted. And then, of course, what started EDH in general is it is known as Elder Dragon Highlander, the Elder Dragons, and they were all expensive, but there was at least a couple of them that were sort of playable.
Yeah,
Kind
my
of.
boy Nicobolus.
Yeah, he's the main
Nicobolus. He's my favorite.
So I mean, if that's basically at some point back then is when EDH was formed by the RC and whatnot, but that was long before most anybody that I know knew about it. I think a lot of people may have started playing prior to like the first official precons. Obviously, there had to have been players for that to become a thing, but like a lot of people I know didn't start until at least when I started or thereafter. The first precons came out in, what was it, 2011?
2011, and then there was a
2011.
2-year gap.
Okay, so I was thinking 2013 was the first year, so yeah. So I mean, they Wizards finally recognized it as a format and said, we're going to provide you cards specifically for that, but that are also legal in some of our older formats, like Vintage and Legacy and whatnot. So that happened. I know I wasn't playing then, but I mean, a lot of those older precon commanders are still being played today. They may not be as popular, but they're still forces to be reckoned with.
Kali is still out there.
Yeah, I still see Animar. Some of the other early ones too.
Derevi is a popular combo piece. Gave is just an engine.
Well, Dragon was a precon, so
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And then, so I mean, from my understanding, back then it was either you played that sort of battle cruiser meta that we discussed here a little bit ago, or if you were playing on the more competitive end, it was really only a handful of commanders that were even considered viable because of that, I guess, less efficient design back then. Like Zur is a great example. He was the boogeyman. He was the big guy that a lot of people played with and had a lot of success with, but is still a 4 mana. What is he? A 1 1/3 or 1/4.
1/3 with flying.
Yeah,
Honestly.
but then
I
also
want to
gets
say
you
I want to say
crazy
1/3 as well. Yeah.
crazy tutor ability on to get enchantments, and then from there you can break the game with necropotence and other stuff. So I mean, and then it was Get Rog and Prosh Food Chain and Narset extra turns, and
What was it? Derevi Stasis. Yeah.
yeah, stasis locks. Well, Yorn does that now, but
Mhm.
Derevi was the guy. And then where I kind of have more personal experience was once partners were out. As I said, I started playing Commander in 2017, so 2016 was when the partner commanders came out, and they are still the dominating force in CDH and probably even casual. If you were to say
Oh, especially
rate
since
them,
Commander Legends.
right?
Mhm.
There are just
Yeah.
so many more of them now that are playable.
Yeah,
There's so many that the rare commander partners are, priceless. They're and I say priceless in the bad way. They are worthless. They don't, I mean, money wise, which is kind of crazy to me because I think one of the things that I've been looking at recently is the actual financial aspects of packs and sets and that kind of thing, what's worth money and what's not going for so much.
MTG
And
finance, basically.
a little bit.
Mm.
And when you look at sets like Commander Legends, they put out so many things that were colored rare, but not really rare. And not to say that they're less powerful or less fun to play or less good, but it's interesting to see commanders that I see in play every single day heading powerful decks be worthless on the resale market.
Yeah. Well, Commander Legends was printed to shit, so that's part of it, and a lot of it too. Prior to, I guess Commander Legends is a good turning point as well. There was a couple points that I would like to touch on from before that, but since you brought it up, it is a kind of a turning point for the meta in the sense that prior to, the only way you could get partners were in those precons, and those precons were only printed a certain amount of time, and then after that they were expensive because you had to buy singles, and somebody would have had to have sold that to a card shop, and then you buy it for a markup. So with Commander Legends, it was a box set. It had chase cards. People were buying it like crazy, opening packs, and then just flooding the market with all of the etched foils and all the other stuff from the collector's boosters, and which that is actually a shift in the meta too, with all the crazy extra, special cards and treatments and secret layers and everything. But that's more on the MTG finance side of things, which maybe we'll have an episode about at some point. But yeah, Legends printing all of those different ones and then printing them, they kind of did what Dominaria did, where Dominaria flooded the market as well with legendaries. And because it was a standard set, it just kind of gave a ton of options to everybody, including adding all of the first uncommon legends. And then, Commander Legends doing that again added so many. And what's funny is a lot of those, as you say, worth pennies because they're uncommons and everybody has them. But people are still finding ways to break some of those old partners. So
I just think that it's interesting that, especially we've been talking a lot about the two different events of partners being introduced, but in 2016 it was the 4-color deck metas that really just kind of came into play, like the Thrasios Vile Smashers or just like Thrasios Timnas and stuff like that. But I think ever since Commander Legends, we've seen a strong resurgence into 3-color decks, kind of taking a C16 partner and pairing it with something with Commander Legends. And I think that that's been exciting to see for the past year and a half.
Especially
I think
as
it's
red's
healthy
gotten
too.
better. Like the color red's so much more dynamic than it was like two-ish years ago. Now, you could something like Timna Jessica or like Timna Dargo. That was just you wouldn't even thought about doing something like that, even if you could, because the red cards just weren't very powerful.
Rog Thrasios, there's so many just red X permutations that are so much more viable than they used to be.
That brings me to another point, which is kind of just before the Commander Legends partner boom. we had a couple years where power kind of spiked through the roof, probably starting with like Throne of Eldraine and running all the way up until Legends. I mean, notably, Theros Beyond Death introduced both Thassa's Oracle and Underworld Breach, two things that are synonymous with CEDH, like as two of the most prominent, probably, win cons. But also C-play and casual. I've seen people win with Thassa's in casual, and I have personally played Underworld Breach in a couple casual lists just because it's a great recursion tool. It's not even to play it as a busted storm thing.
Yeah, I was just going to agree. Like, I play Underworld Breach in my mono red deck and in another deck, and I play Thassa's Oracle in my Peer and Toothy deck, which is you just blink Toothy and draw cards, and eventually you draw your whole library. So it's like, why wouldn't I play that card? But also, you were talking about like the fire design with Throne of Eldraine and stuff. I think that even goes back to War of the Spark. We saw some really powerful cards in War of the Spark, and that like War of the Spark to probably like Commander Legends. I would say that design philosophy they used for those couple years really pushed the power level of cards. You saw
Dockside,
a lot of new cards added to higher
Smothering Tithe
and CDH.
Kenrith.
Yeah, Kenrith.
Oko.
Well, and it's funny too because I got back into Magic right as Thrones was coming out of Standard, and so when one of the first Standards I came to, they were like, "Oh, now you guys can come back because we're no longer doing Thrones of Eldraine in Standard." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, why does that matter?" And apparently, like, because Thrones had some really jank cards, people just didn't want to play Standard anymore.
Not jank, broken. Oko warped several formats, and then Ikoria came along and did the whole companion thing, and that also ended up
that almost killed Magic.
Yeah, it was a big deal. I think the only other thing that came close to, well, quote unquote, killing it was them deciding to start doing the secret layers, which kind of started with Ikoria with the Godzilla treatments, and I think that was their test run, and it was successful. So then they were like, boom, secret layers. Here's Walking Dead, and people lost their fucking minds.
Yeah, I got a baby Godzilla. I opened 2 packs of Ikoria the other day, or 2 boxes, and I got a baby Godzilla, and I don't even like the card. The card's terrible, but I'm like, I'm going to use this, and I don't know how, but I will.
Really, the only one I liked was Kogla, and I realize it's like, King Kong, but
yeah.
So we had the early days. We've had the power spikes, and then, as I say, when Throne and Theros came back around, and we got Thoracle and Breach, that actually was the first time that the CEDH crowd was able to convince the RC that they needed a banning, because when Thoracle came out right around the same time, Flash got unbanned, and then suddenly we had the Flash Hulk meta, and I didn't really play much during that time. I was still kind of new to Spell Table and new to getting back into CEDH, and most of my friends were playing high power, so it wasn't really that much of a thing for me personally, but I've heard horror stories, and it sounded pretty awful. Because essentially with Flash and Hulk, and I don't know if you guys saw that in casual at all, because I wasn't really playing casual.
I've never seen Flash casting casual.
No.
So like it was one of those things where it was just not a card that you would do anything with in anything but CEDH, but in CEDH it was like the dominating force. Every list ran it that could, and the only things that were trying to fight it weren't really being successful. And it was to the point where you either played that if you wanted to win, or you just lost. So the CEDH community was loud, and they petitioned the RC and managed to get it banned. And as soon as that happened, then there was kind of a renaissance, I think, at least a renaissance that I was a part of.
I definitely agree with that. It opened CEDH up. It made people like me want to play it, like, because I watched a lot of like CEDH content, and then seeing like after the Flash
Hulk every day, every win.
Yeah, or like some permutation of it, like the content creators like, don't worry, we're purposely not playing it this time. And you're like, oh, that doesn't sound very fucking healthy, does it?
No, not at all.
And then that's when my interest, I've watched a lot of CEDH content, but that's when my interest to want to play it really started.
Same. I like to call it the summer of Adnos. And that was really when myself and pretty much everybody in my immediate meta, and that's not local because I'm playing with people online, but they're people that were hanging out with me on a particular server, and then eventually most of them followed me to my own server. So they're my core group, and I'd include some of you guys as well. I mean, we've been playing together for a while, but at the time, a lot of us were experimenting with Adnos and just which decks could we jam it into. And I think it also kind of people learning how to play Adnos in turn kind of made everybody kind of look at different ways to storm. World Gorger Dragon combos came back and they had been dead because they just couldn't compete with Flash Hulk, and just a lot of different things that you wouldn't think were you kind of take for granted. At the time, they were kind of not really working until that whole change happened.
My beloved mid-range finally got an opportunity to get past turn 1.
Well, and it's funny too, because as you guys know, I don't generally play CEDH unless under duress, but
I'm going to be pressing you. There's going to be some duress.
But, when I first came back into the scene, I kind of took a look at one side of the board and took a look at the other side of the board and was like, yep, I'm a casual player. Because what I saw, and trust me, I've already gotten heat on Twitter for this, was that CDH players played very linearly. They played the same things. It ended in, the same time frame. And I was like, I don't want to play the same thing. I mean, my favorite expansion of World of Warcraft was Burning Crusade, when you could still make your druid a boomkin and a healer. It's a whole thing. Like, I just like to play things that other people aren't playing, and make them work. It's my own problem. But my secondary problem, and I think this is where we have a lot of people in casual maybe kind of confused about what CEDH is or can be, is that I also really, really, really hate to lose. And that is what kind of has, I think, helped start this power creep in casual, because there's a lot of people like me in there who are like, okay, well, my deck's not winning 70% of the time, so what else can I change about it? What else can I put in it? And then, we start getting higher and higher and higher, and a little bit more mean and a little bit more mean. And what I also realized is that in casual, people get their feelings hurt. But in CEDH, people don't get their feelings hurt because they're expecting to play at that level.
That has been the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. And so it is actually becoming more appealing to me, because I don't like to lose. I do like to win. But I do like the chatter at a casual table. But when it comes to those last 5 turns, I want to be the person there at the table. I don't want you to kill me because you think I'm the threat, but I'm not the threat. But I could be the threat, but I'm possibly the threat. And, all of these questions that you have in casual, they're not in CDH. And so I kind of have found myself on this brink where I still love that jank deck, stay out of my squirrels that I've kept for emotional purposes, but I also want to win. And I think that there's a lot of other casual players out there who are maybe, I won't say intimidated, but frustrated that they feel like they have to play the same deck as other players in CEDH, that they want to play something more, I'm going to say fringe, but they also really, really, really want to win. And I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, this is a game. I don't want to take it so seriously, but I look over to my left and I have 18 binders of sets. Each set is in a binder, so 18 different sets over there, and stacks of cards. So, like, I'm already taking it seriously, but I also want to make sure that if I step away from the casual community, that I have a community that still enjoys the things that I enjoy in the competitive community.
I just wanted to say that you mentioned the that every game would play the same because everybody's playing the same lists, and that basically you're expected to win by turn 3 and things like that. That is a really big misconception, and I challenge everyone to go and look at my backlog, because most of my games are like an hour and a half to 2 hours, and it's CDH.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a matter of who's in the pod, who's piloting what, and a lot of different variables.
So much luck too. Like, I think
just having the right interaction at the right time to stop the
Yeah.
win, and then the game drags longer. I think that happens in casual too, with like board wipes. Somebody spends all this time building this huge board, and they're the threat, and then a board wipe happens, and then somebody else gets built up, and then a board wipe happens, and you're just playing for 3 hours and not really winning.
Many board wipes.
I feel that happens less than it used to. I think that is almost a misconception of casual these days.
Yeah.
No.
Also, to one of your other points, though, is at the end of that, you were saying that you were worried about, and other people might be worried about, like, kind of leaving casual behind. You don't have to leave it behind. I'm still playing casual here and there. It's just finding the niche of people that you like to play with, and the power level expectation, which is the rule 0 thing. If you can agree that everybody's going to sit there and play an optimized casual, so like, this is definitely casual. We're not running free rocks. We're not running free counter spells. We're not running the most busted shit, but we are running a super synergistic tight list that, like, I can't find a cut for any card to like put anything else in here, and it's going to do this thing, and it does it well, and you need to be prepared to deal with that. It's the same mindset you go into with CDH, except for you're just kind of limiting the power a little bit and using a commander that's probably not good enough for CDH. And that's where you were kind of leaning to, was the Fringe thing, which I'm kind of a mod on the Fringe. There's a subreddit and a Discord. I'm not really a mod, but I'm kind of support staff, if you want to call it that. I've had them on my show a few times. We've played Fringe. I actually want to do a podcast episode with them, and you would probably be a good target for that, because you and other people like you that are kind of on that cusp of, like, I want to play that because I like that it's not emotional, and it's just everybody understands what's going on and we just go. But you also like the chatter. I also have lots of chatter in all of my games, so
yeah,
I don't see that as being an issue either. And I think that those are some imaginary hurdles that people can get over if we make shows like this that say that, like, hey, this is how it is, and just jump in, find somebody who plays and try it out.
Oh, I would say I agree.
I definitely have sort of built this community around myself, where I'm friends with people who play CDH, like Fitz, and I have played several games together, and I enjoy him so much. And Trenton, who actually is on my show, We're Gonna Deck You, he is a CDH player primarily. And it's always nice to see how we come at things differently, because he definitely is always seeing something that I'm not. I think my other biggest concern for me is that when I'm sitting in a casual game, and I know that this, like, it's so funny because you're like, it's imaginary hurdles, and you're probably right about everything that I've said. But I know that in a casual game, I can tell my friends that, hey, I might miss triggers. Can you help me out? And they do.
We play like that too in CDH.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a game where I had a Esper or a Ristic out, and I literally missed like every trigger because as a host, you're also interacting with chat and doing other things, so you're not 100% focused. And I've had people that were just kind of like, hey, they were asking for my Ristic Study triggers or my Esper triggers for me, because they know that I'm trying to do more than one thing. And
yeah, which is really cool. It's all about who you play with.
Right. And I think curating your pods is a big thing, but also not being afraid. I do it regularly, where me and like one guy from my Discord will go jump on the CDH subreddit Discord, and they have games firing all the time, and we will play with randoms. And we've had some bad experiences, but for the most part, you find new people, and a lot of times I invite them to my server, and they come over and they play with us, and that's how it goes.
RJ, you're so cute with your hand.
Thanks. So honestly, like, one of the most wholesome moments I've ever had with CEDH was during a Rakdos Storm list, and just someone in our pod was like, I know that I have the win here. I'm trying to figure it out. And between the three of us and Twitch chat, we all just kind of just helped build together the win. And it was just an incredibly wholesome experience. So believe everyone's going to want to support you and make you do the thing that your deck is supposed to do. So
maybe not at an LGS.
maybe
Those
not
people might not
LGS.
be that great, and even with randoms on Spell Table, maybe not that great. But if you're a guest on someone's show, they're going to make sure they're inviting people that aren't assholes.
Right.
Fair.
Basically.
Well,
You'd
and
hope
it's so
so
funny because going back to the LGS, when I first started playing at my LGS, I lost all the time. And now I lose a lot of the time on Spell Table. It's fine. I'm dealing with it. I have therapy. But
Well,
I
it's
go
also a wider range of people. You know,
Oh, yeah,
you're
for
looking at
sure.
hundreds versus like 10.
and then I go back to my LGS and like I think the last time I was there, I literally messaged one of the guys who works there because he's a friend of mine now, which is cool. And was like, is it unfair for me to play here? Because I was sitting here and this was like maybe the 4th or 5th game after I'd come back from like 5 months of just streaming. And I'd come back and like just wiped the floor with them. Just pa pa. And I mean, and they tried. I mean, most of my games weren't even Commander. It was what is it when they play 3-on-1? I was the one.
Oh, arch enemy.
Arch enemy, exactly. And they tried, but for the most part, they couldn't beat me. And I even asked somebody because he had all these
You
expensive
were worried
cards.
about pub stomping?
Yeah. He had all these expensive cards and he was either misplaying or his deck wasn't working. And I was like, hey, have you ever like looked on EDH Rec or Moxfield or, you know, any of these websites that I just started listing down like 100 of them? And he's like, no, I don't do that. Oh, okay.
Some people are very prideful about it's homebrew and it's not a net deck. Like, dude, Magic's like, it's not solved because there's so many combinations, but like,
right.
The tiers, like that's why there's a database. Like people have established lists because they've play tested, they've tried things. I have a list on the database only because I built a thing, I played the shit out of it, and I figured out like, okay, this needs to change, this needs to change, this is a weakness, this is a strength. And then new sets came out and it was like, okay, these cards actually feel good and maybe I'll cut this thing that hasn't been performing. And they do that over the course of a time. And most of those lists, the only reason they stay on there is because they have to be curated. Somebody has to be going in there and updating it regularly. Otherwise, they take it off the list. So those kinds of resources online are great, helpful, and things that, like you said, that guy didn't know or turned his nose up to it. And that's a shame because you have this information available to you and it can help you become a better player, yada, yada, yada. I mean, obviously, experience is part of it, but...
Yeah.
It's the age of information. Why wouldn't you use those resources? Like,
exactly.
It's available to you for free.
I'm gonna admit it. Like, I like to build like decks built around like maybe not the most obvious themes a lot of the time, but still make them powerful, and I still use the fucking internet to like research cards. Like, can't be like, oh, Scryfall, some weird theme, sure. But
Scryfall is so good.
But you're still using the internet to build your deck. You're still a net decker.
You only know what you know. Like, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know every single billionth card that Magic has ever printed.
I think there's something like 30K now.
I think there's like 25,000 or some shit legal in Commander. Like, it's absurd.
Yeah.
Like, how are you supposed to know all those?
My friend and I tried to like think of how many cards that we know offhand that we could be like, this is what it does, or like, and know it exactly. And I think I'm up to 25 that like I could tell you mana cost and I know exactly. And then when you like, oh, I recognize that name, I'm probably closer into like the 1,000 or so. But like, I still use my tools. And I love janky. I mean, anyone who's played against me knows that I love janky. Trenton like beats his head against the wall because I want to put Jankin over mana ramp. And he's like, no, Beth, ramp. And I'm like, no, I only need 32 lands. I swear. It's a whole problem.
Well, you can do less if you do more rocks or more dorks or more, more stuff. Yeah. The lowest amount of lands I have, I think my Timna Rograk list, I think I'm on 27.
Yeah.
And I've never once been mana screwed. Never. It's a well-oiled machine.
I tried to put 25 in Chatterfang, not optimized, and we'll just say it didn't go well.
Yeah, predictably. So we kind of did a little bit of a tangent, but
Sorry.
no, this is good. We had some good bouncing off of each other, and kind of coming to the end of like what I had said was the summer of Adnos and the Storm Turbo kind of meta that was and I mean that in the sense of like even casual lists were trying to go faster because there were so many different things that came out that were just more efficient, and like we said,
encourage you to go faster. Like,
everything, just lower CMC commanders that were actually like did things that were worthwhile. Lower CMC artifacts, like 3-drop rocks in casual are not a thing anymore, at least for people like me. I don't think I play a single 3-drop.
I agree with you, Islay, and I don't really play 3-mana rocks. They're just slow.
There's so many 2s, and even there's 2s that come in tapped that are still kind of faster than a 3.
And there's just an advantage when your deck has a density of 2-mana rocks. If you start to draw them in a row, you can chain them together, and that's really hard to do with 3-mana rocks.
Right. And I mean, like I always used to joke, or when we used to play casual more often, it was always like the CEDH thing for casual, like a CEDH turn 1 in casual is land, soul ring, other rock. That's a 2-drop. And then maybe even into like a mana dork or something. Like if you can do that in casual, people will be like, your deck is overpowered. And it's like, no, it's not. Sure I just managed to get like fucking 4 cards in a row that just chained into each other. It's not my fault. But in CDH, nobody complains because they're like, hey, you're expected to drop a land and drop 1 to 2 0-drop rocks, and then another 1 or 2-drop something. Maybe your commander, maybe another dork. So it's just expected. You either have that turn 1 boom or yada yada. So
you're expected to have like usually 5 or less cards in hand by the end of turn 1 easily.
Right. And then sometimes you even chain that into a wheel and then fuck everybody else's mulligan and refill your hand and keep going if possible. But
I just sent you guys a list actually of a deck I just built using the Stranger Things, and it's a little janky, but I played it last night, and it's not nice. But I sent it to you because I wanted you to see like what your guys' perspective would be on making it better, but still casual. Because it does have a 0-drop mana rock in there, and it does have a proxy of a $4,500 land. Just
which land? Cradle?
Mishra's Workshop.
Oh, Workshop. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, hey, and that's another thing that anybody who's scared of getting the CEDH because it's so expensive, like get over it. Proxy shit. Yeah, like you can play these things and just have a good time. You don't have to fucking take it out a second mortgage on your house to like.
Also, there's a dedicated CEDH proxy. CEDH budget brews. Channels, and if you are feeling
$500 or less
about it, absolutely, because that's how my Winota list got started. That's how my Ashaya list got started, and it may not consistently go off on turn 4, turn 5 unimpeded, but
I've played my $500 budget Godo list against full fleshed out CDH list, and it's won.
Listen, I have a goal. My second CEDH deck is going to be Princess Twilight Sparkle, and you guys are going to make it happen.
Challenge accepted. Let's go.
So I think that's a good not that particular card, but the deck you were just talking about. No, funnily enough, there was a episode on another channel that I was guesting on. We were doing unset commanders, and somebody played. That was their secret commander, was the pony. It was weird, and they had a weird deck, but it was kind of cool.
You can say Princess Twilight Sparkle. I'll allow it.
Do it.
Princess Twilight Sparkle.
Ding, ding, ding. Number one.
Ding, 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 ding. Every pony wins the game.
Yeah, he wanted to win with that, and he was like, "Yeah, it's like a tie." And I was like, "That's lame. Nobody wants to tie. We want to win." He didn't end up tying. He ended up losing. We all did. I think the host won, but anyhow. So basically, what I was trying to get at after the whole last little bit was that I think currently, from the perspective of someone who recently has been playing a mixture of things from optimized casual, all the way up to CEDH. I feel like the format, just EDH as a blanket, is pretty healthy right now. Because like the turbo thing was happening, a lot of stacks decks started cropping up, and a lot of commanders that didn't seem good enough on paper. People like myself, like RJ, like Faded. God, who else? Like, there's so many. RJ, you can help me out with that. Who else are
Mab, Skylar,
Right.
Claire? Yeah. There are so many people who have embraced mid-range
and
stacks.
stacks? Yeah.
Sakara.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
Cicadas,
hipster
one of the
stacks.
biggest, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like that, there's been more. I think this is also a byproduct of Commander Legends because, as I say earlier, there's a lot of partner pairings that just haven't been explored yet. I mean, people are trying to break that new partner from Kamigawa, the Hound. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing like Ken from Stacked EDH and other people that are just like high on it, and they were at first going like super casual, and then now people are talking like they can partner this up with something and actually have enough legends that are viable and like trying to make it into CEDH, and it's impressive to see.
There's just so many legendary permanents.
I do need to put my foot down though and say hashtag don't sack the dog. Do not feed it to any worm to vesh. No.
What about the toad?
I mean, are you talking about the Sultai enchantment toad?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
Tatsunari.
I've seen
Timing.
variants of that spawn out of like Nath Discord and like discard stacks and enchantment stacks, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of steam that's been brewing for that one.
But like my point is that it's gone from where like it was basically a requirement to play 4 or 5 color, 3 color at minimum to really be consistently viable. There were the outliers. There was the Gitrog and the Prosh and the Gave, like you said, and things like that. And then moving more forward, like Grand Arbiter and some other 2 color things that just did their thing pretty well. But for the most part, it was kind of very much to be at the top. You had to play these things, and if you weren't, you were just second place most of the time. And now it feels like people. I don't know if it's just because I'm more plugged in now than I was a couple years ago when I was already brewing like this, but just didn't have the audience or the people to bounce the ideas off of. Either way, I mean, some of my more recent projects, the Sithis list, I built Millicent, and even though it was kind of convoluted and didn't work for a while, like I played a lot of games with it, lost a lot of games, just never felt effective. And then eventually I got it into a place where it was like, okay, it's feeling pretty good. And then Kamigawa came out, and Tameshi ended up being like a bomb in that list because it just makes an extra turns combo that much easier. And it's tutorable with the 2 wizard cycling things that are in the deck. So it's like, finally, blue has a way to tutor the creature. I can tutor the other shit already, and I can put together this extra turns combo and win with the value off of my commander, which is essentially doing the same thing Najila does, just with more steps, and it's more difficult. But we got stacks.
But we got stacks. We got blue-white stacks to back it up.
That's all you got to do. And then Shorkai came out, and it was like, oh shit, I got an even better project. And he actually wins with, I guess it's an because it's a machine.
Is a robot. A robot possessed by a spirit. In the story, it's possessed by a kami.
Nice. I didn't know that. That's kind of cool. But yeah, like I like to be at the forefront of like new commanders are coming out. Let's try to break them. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes they end up at like the fringe level.
So I also want you to break Goshen Tie of Life's Origin.
That is very plausible. All
right, so I guess we're gonna have to do a series at some point that like Beth breaks things.
I like it.
We'll sit. Pending. You'll give us a challenge, and we'll brew it. I love doing that. I brew shit all the time. I come up with these challenges on my channel,
and we'll just try to
break it as much as possible.
We could do that. Yeah, we could do.
Yeah, okay, I've already got it. Cool. Islan, you're gonna have to do Princess Twilight Sparkle because I like making you say her name. Fitz, I'll give you the Goshen Tie of Life's Origin. And RJ, Queen Marchesa.
Done. Easy. Yeah.
RJ is like
All right.
Mardu stacks, builds itself.
Yeah, exactly.
But Queen Marchesa has to have a royalty theme.
I can do that. Rule of law technically is a monarchy-based thing.
Hey, you put the monarchy stuff in, and you can also put in
Court of Grace and yeah.
the new Empress.
Yes.
Light Paws?
No, the Planeswalker, the Wandering.
Wandering
The Wandering Emperor.
And you could put in the old Planeswalker too. Why not?
There you go.
Just for funsies. All right, so yeah, like I say, I think the format's kind of gotten to a place where it's healthy. There's a lot of people that are brewing in different spaces. I've been keeping up on the database as far as updates go. Not to exclude anybody else, there's also recently the Pauper EDH or Pauper CDH. They call it PDH. It's the most competitive you can be using the Pauper building restrictions. They actually started up a database too and have had some submissions and things. It's the guy who's over on the Tryhards that got that started. If there's any part of the format that you're into for EDH, there's a competitive kind of thing going for it as well. Artisan, Pauper, regular old CEDH. Then there's the middle ground where it's like high power or fringe. Like there's something for everybody. And I try to bring as much attention as I can to all of these things so that people can have like that, you know, light bulb moment where they're like, oh, like that totally appeals. Like we've all had that moment where we're like, oh, Magic appeals to me because of this thing that I saw. And I want to, you know, kind of provide that for some people.
And that's something I love about the format too, is like I personally play Magic like all over the spectrum. I play a lot of CDH, but also like among my own decks have like a deck built around a video game or deck built around death metal arts. Like I play a lot of casual and a lot of like what you'd probably call like just jank decks, and like doesn't mean like you can love one and still love the other.
Yes,
absolutely.
You don't have to be in one camp or the other. And I think too many people are kind of in an us versus them. It reminds me mostly of like MMOs, and I'm sure you can relate, Beth, as far as like Warcraft goes. I played EverQuest, but there was always people who enjoyed playing PvP and people who didn't. And the people who enjoyed PvP called everybody Care Bears, and the other guys called them gankers. And like, they were just at each other's throats. And if you were in forums back in the day, this is before Reddit and shit, they were fucking tearing each other new assholes and posting memes and doing all the things. And it's basically all just moved now to like Twitter and Discord, but it's the same shit. Discord is just a modern day forum. It's the same thing. So like, we're still doing the same things. It's just a different game and it's different circumstances and like different real world shit that's affecting our lives. So I think at some point anybody can kind of get into any one of these things. It's just a matter of having the right introduction.
Absolutely.
So, I agree. And like playing with the right people, make sure that everyone's on the same page.
And I get that not everybody's an extrovert. There are a lot of introverted people, but a lot of introverted people are actually more extroverted when they're interacting on the internet. So,
oh, for sure, I'm a hardcore introvert. I'm not going to a fucking party or like see me at a bar. Never.
No, never.
I'm also very introverted. So
I'm the opposite, I guess. I'm not worried about. I've been a frontman of a band. I've hosted a podcast. I'm now hosting other content on the internet. Like I've been the guy who was throwing the party. Like I wouldn't say that I'm completely extroverted. Like I have some introverted qualities, but for the most part, I'm not shy and I don't care. So doing this on the internet for me is just natural. But that also is one of the things that makes it easier to kind of like gather in, you know, pull you guys in for a group.
But also like not to say that I'm shy as Lane. I'm just like don't always have something to say or do well in large crowds of people.
Sure. I get that. I've had periods of my life where I was more that way and then kind of broke out of the shell. But I think that for people who are more like that, being able to do these things over the internet kind of helps get past some of those hurdles, but then also helps them to discover new things. Because if you're just going to one LGS and you're only interacting, or you just have a group of friends that come over and that's all you interact with, that's your meta. You have no random things appearing, no fluctuations, no variations, unless somebody just the stacks player decides like, I'm going to play turbo today, and then fails spectacularly,
throws everything for the spin. No, and I agree.
mean,
Like I live in the middle of nowhere, so like I've never really had a local game store. My meta is just like my best friends. We would play at my table and drink. And before I really broke out into like spell table, a lot of my like commander opinions were just based on that. And everyone I played with I wouldn't say it's like fringe or competitive, but everyone liked to play strong decks. They wanted to play powerful Magic.
The arms race. I think it happens with every play group because everybody wants to be better than their friend. And then eventually it gets to a point where you're playing damn near CDH, and then it's like, well, but I don't want to be a CDH player. I don't want the stigma. I don't want to be that PvP guy. I don't want to. And then you just got to accept it. Like, you're open to the idea because you were open to making your shit better to beat your friend. But also, it's kind of an echo chamber in the sense that you're just hearing the same shit from the same group of guys. When I used to have my in-person play group, my opinions of things were vastly different than they are now because there's so many more influences, so many more people that I interact with. And also, when you put yourself out there to create content, you're kind of like, you're not necessarily an authority, but you're kind of presenting yourself as one. Not to say that I know more than you do, fellow listeners, but
no, Islane wants to argue with you on the internet now. He said,
I mean,
You can direct all your arguments to Islane. I am not here for comment.
So it's one of those things that not necessarily that you feel that you're better than or you know more than. I surely don't. There are much more talented brewers and players than me. I take inspiration from those people just the same as someone else would take inspiration from me. And that's the glory of it, for lack of a better sounding term, because glory sounds stupid. But it's what makes it cool is that everybody is kind of in the same toilet bowl together. Like, it's been a rough couple of years for most people. And we have this thing. We thankfully, we're in a place where we're not getting bombed or having any of this other shit happen that is happening in the other parts of the world. We're in a place where we can sit comfortably in air-conditioned enclosures, sitting on padded furniture, and talking about a fucking card game over the internet with essentially strangers. But that's the beauty of it, is that we can do that, and that it's all here, and we're all part of a bigger thing. And being able to pull even more people into that thing, I like the sound of that. You know, having more people to play with, more people that are going to add to the overall value of the community, even though this is not a monetary value thing. It's just, you know, it's not physical. It's just a manifestation of a lot of people putting their effort into a thing. And that's where you get cool shit like Elder Dragon Highlander's stream that's coming up on Saturday, 12-hour charity stream to benefit the Red Cross helping the Ukraine right now.
Yeah. I'm actually in that too.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the last pod. It's me, Josh, Alan from Mental Misplay, and Josh from Second Seven, Alan, and Rebel. We're closing out the stream. It's right after my own stream, which Fitz will be in that stream.
So you're getting a preview for your division in the tournament.
Alan's not part of it.
Josh is.
Yep. Rebel's not either.
Yeah,
but
yes.
I already know Josh because he's been my teammate for the 2v2 games.
There you go.
And we're playing the third 2v2 game on Saturday, and Fitz is my opponent. Boo, Team Canada. Yay, Team USA. It's the tiebreaker. We both won a game apiece, so we're going to see how that goes.
Nice.
Gonna be no match for the James and James connection.
Yeah.
So, last thing, basically kind of to wrap things up. So we've talked about our histories with the game. We've talked about kind of the meta as we've seen it over like this last decade or so. Casual CDH and other variants. The one last thing that I wanted to touch on is something that might help people in Beth's situation where they're kind of going towards that higher power level, or just even anybody who plays EDH overall, but I think it's a little more important as you get in the higher power tiers, is like just the virtue of having multiple decks to play with. And the reason why I think that that's a virtue, so to speak, is that you're not that guy that's just playing the one deck over and over and over again. So nobody has to be frustrated that your deck wins too much, or frustrated that they don't like it because it shuts off their deck, whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? Also, it kind of forces you to learn different play styles, because every commander is going to kind of lean towards a different strategy. Some are more mid-range, some are more stormy, some are more like just draw cards, some are just aggro, some give you extra combat, some give you cheats this thing into the play trigger, some give tokens. You know, they all have different activated abilities, whatever the case may be.
Especially modern commander designs, a lot of them really send you on a quest. They're like, do this thing.
They do, and that's kind of where that linearity that Beth mentioned earlier comes in. But at the same time, I think that there still is room for creativity in the sense of, like, take Shorikai, for example. There's people that are playing it with a polymorph into the Hullbreaker Horror. And then there's people like me that are playing it more as a stack/vehicle beats list that also has some combos where you can just draw your deck and win with Thassa's or whatever. And then there's other people that are just completely win con lists, and it's completely just a bunch of vehicles smash face. Rebel built that deck as well. So like I've seen 3 different lists from the same commander, and the only thing is just basically because of the way the commander is worded and what it does. It can be built kind of however you want, and that's just what kind of certain people have decided was a good build path. Cards like Sithis kind of lead you down a path of play enchantments, draw cards, figure it out, right?
Yeah, that one's kind of a fetch quest. So this is like, do this thing, get reward.
Right. But then other cards like Kenneth are like, okay, you can abuse any one of these 5 abilities, pick one or pick all. You know,
it's so funny because I have a Kenrith deck. I finally took him apart, but I had a Kenrith deck, and every time I pulled him out, people would be like, "Oh my god, it's Kenrith! What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win with happily ever after."
I'm gonna play Magic the Gathering. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, but like the win con was so silly, and they're like, "This is not what we were expecting. Why?"
That happens in a lot of different formats too, though, because like for instance, I built so there was an episode of the Mind Sculptors. If you're not familiar, those are the guys that are running the MLC. It's Callahan, Phoenix, Pongo, and some other known entities from the CDH sphere. They did an episode where they were basically like, we're taking Arden, which is one of the Commander Legends legendary creatures with partner. Mono white has an ability to where when it goes to combat, you can attach any number of equipments or enchantments or auras, to anything. So that's where like Sakara fucking found, like with hipster stacks, you could take Skull Clamp and just attach it to their dorks, and you draw the cards and kill their creature, which is cool, right? So it can do a bunch of different things, but they basically were taking this idea from Modern. And that's what a lot of people in the competitive sphere have been doing, is finding old Legacy or Modern decks and figuring out how to translate them to CEDH. Same with like Rebel did Hand in Hand, which is some old Modern deck or Legacy deck or something, and kind of translated it to with Arden and Timna. So the Sculptors did a podcast episode where 3 of them, I think it was Cobblepot, Callahan, and I don't recall who the third person was. I apologize. It's been like a month. But they all said, we're going to build Arden with X commander. And then they figured out however. But they all wanted to follow this Stoneblade methodology, which comes from Modern, which was playing Stoneforge Mystic and Sword of Fire and Ice, or one of the other swords, mostly Sword of Fire and Ice,
I
because
think I
it's
remember it was
stone.
comedian.
Then they built 3 different versions. I know one had Crom. I don't remember what the other 2
Crom,
were.
Tana, and the last one was Vial Smasher.
Thank you, Secretary RJ. So they did that. I watched the thing, and I had already been considering doing something with Arden, but I didn't know who I wanted to partner him with. And then I was thinking about it, and there had been chatter about people building stuff with Kamal, the Heart of Krosa, which is the big mana. It's like 8 mana, fucking 6/6 or something. But the important part is on combat, it adds +3/+3 and trample to your
overrun every time it's here to combat.
Right. So it's expensive, but it's good. And I was like I want to kind of I wanted to kind of use both of those commanders for something, and then I was just like, well, fuck it, let's just smash them together. So I built Selesnya Stoneblade, and having done so, I am now forgetting the point of why I brought it up. Well, I mean, I guess my point is that people in the community are doing these kinds of deck building challenges, so to speak, and pulling inspiration from other formats and kind of coming up with new things and pushing boundaries and trying stuff. And it's not necessarily the best thing, but it does kind of teach you how to build something. So when you're trying to build to CEDH, you're trying to build something to be as powerful as possible. You have to kind of come across like a deck building philosophy of like, curves got to be low. Everything needs to fit into whatever your specific game plan is. No cards that are dead cards, and by dead cards means like if you draw this and you don't have the other piece, can you use it? If you can't, it's a dead card, and you should probably move on. There's so much that goes into all that.
Like
sure.
I'm not putting down Thassa's Oracle, Islane. It's still good. It's still good in my hand in my my Timna Grom deck.
But Thassa's is kind of a dead card if you don't have the other piece. Yeah, it's and that was my point, is that you're not going to cut. You're not going to cut that.
Win the game,
right? You're not going to cut that, and that is probably one of the only exceptions. But lots of times you're going to have this card where it's like it only works for this part of this combo, and it does nothing else otherwise. And sometimes that's just something you got to cut, and that's just kind of the way it goes. But overall, having built a bunch of different things for different metas, and I think the most important takeaway from that is that you have to learn different ways to play, because it kind of trains your brain to like think, okay, this person is playing this thing. I know what that does, so I need to hold up mana to be able to stop this because he's got that amount of mana. Like a black player is holding up 5 black. What is he going to cast? Probably Adnaz, right? So you have that in your brain. You see that on the table, and you go, okay, I'm going to prepare for that. I'm going to keep my mana up and have this counter spell available. And then there's other people that are just like, I don't care. I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want to do. And then they don't have interaction. Although it's in their hand, they just can't cast it because they didn't hold up the mana, and you lose the game. So
I've been attacked.
We've all done it. We've all done it because you feel so far behind that you're like, I'm going to jam this out. And then
somebody else spends removal on yours. And then, yeah.
Or that happens. Yeah. They counter your thing, and you're just trying to ramp, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to mental misstep your Soul Ring. And then the other guy casts Demonic Consultation off of the Thassas, and you're like, oh, I could have mental misstepped that, but I got worried about this stupid Soul Ring. So, I mean, it's one of those things where I think people need to play against more decks, but they also need to play more decks, because that guy that's only playing the one deck all the time isn't going to recognize certain things. Yes, he'll recognize stuff that his opponents are doing, but he's not going to alter his game plan because of the fact that he's, so focused on the thing. I'm derailing, but I think you get where I'm going.
I do, Islay, and I was just going to say, like, another reason you shouldn't only play one deck and how this translates to casual is if you get hyper focused on one deck and you're always tuning your like casual deck and play it every Saturday, you're going to like inadvertently create an arms race or bad gameplay experiences for your friends. if you're like always tuning your one new deck, even if you're not trying to make it high power CDH, you might create a deck where you're like overwhelming your opponents.
Right. So I guess to summarize, because that was a little rambly and not focused. Aside from learning different play styles and playing against a wide range of decks, like to help improve your performance as a pilot, you can also understand that there are, if you look at other formats in particular, like Modern and Legacy Vintage, some of the 1v1s, there are particular like counters to certain strategies. Everything, even in CDH or EDH, it's all kind of a rock, paper, scissors game where there's a little bit of, rock beats scissors, if that makes sense. So like control decks and stacks decks slow down turbo decks. Mid-range decks don't care about stacks because they're just like, yeah, whatever, I'm grinding value and eventually I'm going to get my win con. So it's a matter of like, if you're playing in a particular pod, especially if you're doing tournament stuff, that is one thing that I'm learning now going into this MLC, is that I've never played in a tournament, so I didn't really know the prep that goes into it. But realizing that there's a draft and we're going to know what our opponents have in their pool as far as decks, you can kind of plan
via
for
draft. One draft pick when someone in your conference is picking one deck, and you shift your strategy mid draft. Yeah,
right.
It's going to be insane.
Well, you only get to pick 4 decks though.
Yes.
Right, but we know already what the schedule is. So, for instance,
okay,
we're going to have draft day on April 9th, and everybody will know the 4 decks that each person has. But then we already know the schedule, so it's going to be like, okay, going into my first game, I'm playing against these 4 people. They have these 12 decks among them, so I can properly plan like which deck am I going to play.
So then, do you know who goes first in every game?
You're right. They do have a turn order on there. That is correct. So you would even know down to that. So there's so much planning that can go into it. Knowing the meta, knowing what decks they have, knowing what their decks do. Because we have to submit our deck list at some point. I don't know if that's going to be public knowledge also, but you can basically like plan it to where I'm going to play this deck into a fortunate like matchup.
Yeah. Say, I listened to that podcast this morning at work, and I was trying to fucking parse some of that information, but it kind of wasn't clear. But I remember they said that everyone in each division gets 1 game going first. So that's 4 games. You kind of already know the turn order, or can anticipate, where you might have to think about where you're playing.
I think that could be part of it, because some decks want to go first and some decks are fine with going later turns. So like stacks of your list is fine with going later turns because it's like, turn 1 is great to drop a turn 1 stacks piece, but if you're going later, you can still drop the stacks piece and usually it's still effective. As long as somebody hasn't got off to like a really crazy start. But either way, there's a lot of strategy that goes into it, and that's the whole overarching point, is that the meta is diverse. Then there's a lot of things to know. And going back to what we talked about people's knowledge of like card names and or art and or what they actually do, and it's like limited to what you actually know what a card is, and it's a little bit more stuff that you kind of recognize, you kind of think you know what it does, and then even more shit that you don't know at all. So kind of doing as much practicing amongst different pods, different power levels, it just more experiences. Consuming content even helps. It opens up a lot of information to where you can gather all that information and kind of like know what different things are doing, what's popular right now, what's not, the meta shifts, and then knowing what to do to prepare your list for that. If you're going into a meta that's very specific, like the MLC, you can actually plot that down very specifically. If you're just generally playing with random people, you want to have a kind of a mixture of answers and things that are going to combat the most popular strategies. And I think that still happens in casual as well. It's just less of a focus because most people are kind of just there to hang out and have a good time.
And I was just gonna say, like with my content and my streaming, my guests are like mostly community driven. I just invite people on.
Yeah.
So a lot of my pods are like me basing that what I think their play preferences are based on like just like interacting them on Twitter and maybe seeing a deck list.
Right.
And then I just hope that my fucking incredible charisma is going to stop things from being a bad time.
I mean, I've been on your show a few times. I got another one coming up here in a couple weeks. I've not had a bad time. So you've been on the show with me. We've never had a bad time. So
yeah, we even played casual together, and like I thought when we did the high powered stream with the Crimson Vow Legends.
yeah,
I really liked that. That was a good time. Just I liked some of the things you talked about before the game, where you were like, may not say don't play these cards, but to like create a certain play experience, not include like lots of fast mana or like all the free counters and
right.
stuff.
Yeah, like I just said, this is my definition of high power. Do you guys agree? And everybody was just like, yeah, that's cool. And then we went cool. And that was the only restriction was like, don't play fucking Mana Crypt, Mox Diamond, Mox Amber, Mox Opal, blah blah blah
Force
blah.
of Will.
Yeah, and
effects.
Then
I mean, I still had Vampire Tutor in my deck. My deck was powerful.
Yeah. My deck fucking got out, cheated out some big stuff. I ended up playing it on a guest stream and got out of Blightsteel and killed somebody.
Fuck yeah.
Blightsteel. Ugh.
It was just one of those things.
I'm speaking my language. Big stunts.
Right? Yeah, so I think we've covered the bases that we wanted to cover today. I think this is a good inkling as to what we're trying to do as a show. I once again want to thank Beth, Fitz, and RJ for joining me. It was a great time, guys. We're going to get back together here within the next couple weeks, week or two. Doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. But you guys will see another episode here within a couple weeks. And I will work on trying to get that up on all of the podcast places. So those of you that want to listen to this in your car and not have to watch a video can do so. Guys, if anybody has anything they want to say before we sign off, say it now.
Yeah, when you are consuming said podcast or on YouTube, hit all the buttons that it tells you can hit.
Absolutely.
Collect the high score.
Also, if you guys want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, if you're watching it here, that would be great. I am still trying to get that YouTube partnership. It means a lot if we can get there. We're like 250 away, so let's do it.
Hit that fucking subscribe button. Get it in ya.
Word. And also, I will put links to everybody's content in the description. I want you to go follow Beth's stream, follow Arena of the Ancients, follow RJ on Twitter. You will see more of us soon.
Well, they're doing a thing where it's Magic the Kittens March bracket, and Baloney is one of the cats. So.
Is it just like a votes thing?
Yeah, they're just like a bracket where like which cat's
people
cuter.
Vote. Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna have to do the
right thing. Vote Baloney.
Team Baloney. Team Baloney.
Team Baloney.
Team Baloney.
All right. With that, I think we will call it a day. But thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Take care.
Bye.